Welcome back to another playoff series with me and Brian Scalabrine. I know we missed a week, but we're back. Got a lot to talk about. So we're going to talk about maybe who can take over the villain role if the Nets and the Clippers both get eliminated. But let's just get started over in the Western Conference with the Clippers versus the Jazz. I thought the series was over after two. I don't know what to make of it. Clippers are the most bipolar team in the NBA left.
For
I
sure.
mean, what are you thinking of this?
Yeah, so I knew the Clippers were going to play better, but I think this comes down to like Kawhi Leonard is always he's either above average or great in the playoffs, and he could do it on both ends of the floor. But Paul George is the one that's the most inconsistent, and he was good in both home games. Now, if you're so basically for the Clippers to move on, either you have to be an amazing performance from Kawhi Leonard and probably some average performances from Morris, and I guess Paul George could be bad in that situation. But if Kawhi is what he is, and Paul George is playing at this level, like the Clippers are going to win. That's why people like the Clippers going into the playoffs. I like the Clippers going into the playoffs, but as I've grown to watch, I don't trust Paul George. But so far, if he plays well, he plays aggressive, and he plays confident, the Clippers are probably a better basketball team. One caveat to this whole thing is Mike Conley. I think Conley makes Rudy Gobert a much better offensive player when he's out there. The rest of the guys aren't as good. Like Ingles is okay, but they need to get Rudy Gobert more involved, not in posting him up, but like diving to the basket. Conley's big time with his two-man game. So we'll have to keep an eye out on Mike Conley. But this series is shaking out to be really interesting.
Oh, yeah, especially after last night. What's going to be happening is you have these two blowouts, not blowouts, but I mean, they're Clippers that control both games the entire time. What's going to
For
be happening
sure.
is the next game, the Clippers are going to get blown out by 20, then they're going to blow out the Jazz by 30, and then it's just I hate how this series we can't get a close game because I want to see Donovan Mitchell in clutch time. I want to see Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in crunch time because every time you get Paul George in crunch time, he kind of what we've
Yeah.
seen. Oh, game one was pretty close. The Clippers made a pretty late comeback. But I mean, even though the Paul George slander, especially the first round, he actually didn't play that bad in this series. He's had a couple games where he kind of got lost in he got lost in the lights, especially in game one or two. But if you're a Paul George hater, the past couple games haven't been very good for you.
Well, I think just to add to that, when you're like that Batman and you're the Robin role, right?
Yeah,
You when Batman goes to the bench, you need to dominate that section, and he doesn't do that. It's like his domination is very random, and sometimes it's timely. Sometimes when they have a 20-point lead, he'll have big numbers. Like I do want to see, and then sometimes he'll be. I think he was 3 for 16 from the field and made a big three to go 4 for 16 for the game, or 4 for 17 for the game. So
yeah.
it's just like you're just looking for more consistent play from him, and you just don't get it.
No, you never get it. It's weird. He keeps like in the first series of the Mavericks, he did show glimpses of like the Pacers, Paul George, but this series
For
he's been too
sure.
inconsistent. And I think the one thing too, we talked about this the first time. Ty Lue's coaching himself into being in consideration as one of the best coaches. The adjustments he's made in every series is just incredible, and I think he's been really good. But
I
we've
agree.
heard the tales of the 1-3 Nuggets. Now we're seeing the tale of the 0-2 Clippers. They go down 0-2 and they become a completely different team.
Yeah.
In all respect to Utah, I think the series I think most people want to see is the Clippers versus Suns because that was just, I just think that's the series. And speaking of that, let's go to the Nuggets and Suns. Holy shit, the Suns are good.
hmm they don't have weaknesses. It's funny. No one asked me, are the Suns a championship level team until they saw them beat the Denver Nuggets 4-0. But the Denver Nuggets, I can't believe they beat Portland. I didn't think they had their roster was very good. I get it. Like Nikola Jokic is amazing, but the rest of those guys are just like they're just average players. Now you're requiring Michael Porter Jr. to drop 35 on you. And Nikola Jokic can take over games, but that's actually not his best way of playing. He's at his best when he has a bunch of guys around him and he can get everyone involved. The guy had a 30-20-10 game and they lost. So I just don't think their roster is good enough. But going to the Suns, they don't have a weakness. They have shooting. They have a scorer. They have a guy, a floor general. They have defense. Like DeAndre Ayton could defend the rim, defend the perimeter. Like they have everything you want. Guys like Mikal Bridges are elite at what they do. Like he's an elite role player. He confidently takes threes, gets out in transition, and he defends. I really like what they have. Their depth is not phenomenal, like what they do coming off the bench. But they get a lot out of guys like Cam Payne, and I'm surprised they're able to do that. But the Suns are good. I will be curious how they play in this next round. Them beating the Lakers, they banged up. Now they beat the Nuggets, banged up. It's going to get real for them in the next round, whoever they end up playing.
Yeah, I thought I mean, I wrote this before. If we were able to talk last week, I would look really smart because I said I thought the Suns were going to sweep them in 4, or maybe a gentleman sweep in game 1. They had them. They were down. The Suns were down like 10, and then they went on a 16-0 run, took over. Haven't looked back since. I mean, if you're a Suns fan, you had the years of Dragon Bender, Josh Jackson, and Jared Dudley. This whole thing's worth it. I mean, they're back. The Suns are by far an elite team. You can't question that. And if one thing I think that kind of has been lost in this entire series and the take warriors out there is Aaron Gordon's performance. This entire series was awful. He only
Mhm.
scored 9 points per game, 3 rebounds per game. His defense wasn't the same as it was in that first round against Portland. Uh, Man, that acquisition right now, that was a terrible series for what they paid for.
Well, but also remember, and this holds true for a lot of NBA players, sometimes when you ask an NBA player to do more than he's capable of, like for instance, with no Jamal Murray out there, like they can put more focus on Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon needs to be a guy where they just kind of forget, and then he can drop 25 in a game because they just forgot about him, or he gets a few easy baskets. Like without, he is the type of player when you have your full team and he's a complementary piece, he could be good. In this situation, like you're asking him to do something that he's not capable of, and he was bad. So I don't think that it affects him and his free agency moving forward. I do think he'll re-sign with the Nuggets, and I think he'll get, like some decent money. But it does look bad now. But if Jamal Murray's healthy and they got their whole squad healthy, I think you'll see like the best version of Aaron Gordon, which is like the fourth option on a team.
Well, I mean, if you're the Nuggets, kind of worked out for you then, because you're gonna get them next year, going to be fully loaded. And so going forward with this series, going forward to the Western Conference Finals, so we're gonna look at the Suns, who are already locked in. They're 3-0 against the Jazz, 1-2 against the Clippers. As I said earlier, that's the series I want to see. I don't know how the Jazz would fare up now. Jazz need to get Mike Conley back to, I think, maybe win that series. So let's move over to the East, where it's just kind of been all over the place. Let's start with the Hawks Sixers, which was last night.
Mm-hmm.
I thought after the first half of of game 1, I thought after the second half, I thought the series was over. I thought the Sixers like we figured out the Hawks. Took us one half to figure it out, kind of a little grace
Mm-hmm.
period. But last night, the Hawks came back pretty far down and they won. The series is up 2-2.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's really
Yeah,
crazy.
the physicality of the Sixers was an issue until right when they were down by 18 points. Then all of a sudden, Trae Young didn't shoot the ball well, had 18 assists, only 2 turnovers. And I think that what the Hawks figured out is we can and the Hawks played slow against the Knicks and it worked. They controlled the pace. You're not going to be able to do that against the Sixers. All of a sudden, the Hawks started playing fast. They started moving the ball. They started driving and kicking. And if Atlanta would have made shots that game, Trae Young could have had 25 assists. So I think Trae Young putting the Jets on in this game, playing faster, getting downhill, getting rid of the ball faster, put the Philadelphia 76ers on skates, kind of punched them in the mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
And we'll be interested to see how Philadelphia adjusts to their speed. And it'd be interesting to see if Atlanta could put a whole game together where they're playing at this breakneck pace. So I really like the way that Trae Young attacked in this game, even though he wasn't shooting the ball well. It throws in just like, I agree. After the first half, the Sixers figured out the Hawks, but now in the second half of game 4, like you gotta assume that the Sixers are gonna be on their heels. They have to take back the pace of this game, like the way that Trae Young played. Like give Nate McMillan credit and give Clint Capella credit for the way that he guarded Embiid.
Oh yeah, he was doing really well in Embiid. Embiid had like he's had like 4 moments this every series where it looks like he's hurt for the rest of the playoffs, and then he comes back in later.
Agreed.
But it seems like the hack of Ben Simmons has kind of stopped. Even though I think that's also because Rivers has been taking him out at the end of the games if
Mm-hmm.
there's a free throw situation. But again, I think the most shocking thing for me is with the Hawks winning that. I thought when they lost Hunter for the series, I thought that was another kind of nail in the coffin for him. But hey, they pulled it out, and we're moving on to Game 5, which we'll talk about later. I'm like 90. I guarantee the Sixers win. So let's go to Bucks Nets. This series has been it was over. Then it was, kind of fun. The Bucks stole a game, and now I think it's over again. This thing's been all over the place. It's kind of been back and forth. I don't know how the Nets can win at this point. I think they're in
Every,
such a hole.
everyone I talk to, so like I'm heavily invested in the Bucks. Like I because the landscape of media has changed, we have to learn how to gamble, right? Like so
Yes.
instead of me just like talking about it, I want to I set some money aside and I'm like trying to learn how to do this. So when I go on air, I can talk about it when people ask me and stuff like that, right? So I really like the Bucks. I thought the Bucks were going to win the series. I really liked the way that they played in the Miami series. I thought they figured it out.
Same
Then you
here.
watch
Same
one and two,
here.
you're like, no, they're the same team. They're the same team that plays. They play slow. They don't know what they're doing. Giannis is all over the place. He shoots those random threes. Like, what are you doing? You try to shoot on three guys with guys wide open. Like, then I'm like, they're not that good. But Kyrie Irving gets hurt, so things change around. Now, here's where I'm at. The Nets role players are this. So this is tonight. Tonight is game 5. The
Yeah.
Nets role players are going to be good tonight. These guys are going to wake up with the intent in their mind, like I am ready for this. Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, Mike James, Blake Griffin, Jeff Green. All these guys are like, they're not thinking to themselves, "Oh man, we don't have Kyrie and James Harden." They're thinking like, "Give me my chance. I will show the world what I can do," especially in the Barclays Center. So I want the Bucks to win. I'm heavily invested in the Bucks to win. I am really worried about the Bucks basketball IQ in game 5, and I'm worried that these guys are going to gain confidence moving forward. But everyone tells me I should not be worried by this, but I am. I'm absolutely worried about the Nets role players. And Kevin Durant had 2 bad games in a row. He's the best player in the world, I think. I think he's going to go for 45 points, and that's going to empower the rest of the role players. So we'll see what happens, but I am not optimistic about the Bucks getting it done tonight.
I'm not optimistic about it either. Giannis takes too many of those. Like, he'll just pull up from three. He took like 8 threes, I think, in game 2 and made like 2 of them. Like, dude, he's got to stop with that. But no, I think if you're a prop guy, I hate doing props. I don't know what Joe Harris's prop is. Take the over. Dude's gonna hit like 5 or 6 threes today. It's
Yeah. Yeah, well,
he's
a lot
due.
of those guys, like you could probably make a lot of money. Pick a few guys that you like in the props, and some of the Nets are going to score today. I think they might not be as good defensively, but they're going to score 110 points. So, are the Bucks smart enough? Which if Giannis had a higher basketball IQ, they would be very difficult to stop, like with the players they have on the court. But he's just like it's just so rigid watching him play. He just doesn't have that great feel for winning. He has a great feel for getting downhill, but he should be better than he is. When I watched him play his rookie year, I thought, what a phenomenal passer at his size. He's grown, got better, became an MVP, and he's a worse passer now than he was when he was a rookie. I don't get it.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So let's go over the next 3 games. Make our picks. I think we both kind of saying if you're a prop guy, take all the props on the Nets role players. But next game, so tonight we got we got Bucks at Nets. I mean, I'm gonna take the Nets. I'm not comfortable. I'm not
Wait,
comfortable saying
so
it.
hold on. On game 5, you're taking who?
I'm taking the Nets.
Nets. So you and me are like we think it's the Nets. No Kyrie, no James Harden. You're not bothered by that.
No, I think they're gonna make a game plan, and it just the way my brain works is if everyone thinks it's gonna be a blowout one way, I zag. I zag to the zig.
That's how I think. That's how I think too. I hate to say it. I really want the Bucks to win. I'm heavily invested in the Bucks. I think the Nets are going to win this game.
I also want every small market team to make it to the conference finals, but I don't know. I just can't see it happening. I saw those first 2 games when they got 40 pointed 2 games in a row. Looks
Yeah,
bad. Next game, I think the next one is going to be Hawks at the 76ers. I think 76ers just steamroll.
agree.
I
Agree.
I don't think
Yeah.
that game's even going to be close.
Big win.
Uh,
Agree.
oh yeah, and then last game, Clippers at Jazz. I don't know.
Is
I'm
Paul
gonna
George?
take.
If you believe in Paul George, you believe in the Clippers. If you don't believe in Paul George, then the Jazz are going to win. If Mike Conley comes back, the Jazz will win. Paul George, it's either a Paul George game or it's a Mike Conley game, one way or another.
I'm gonna have Paul George not having a good game. Jazz win by
So
30.
Jazz win.
All right, and so if you have, so let's say theoretically Nets Clippers lose. I said this earlier. We are in a situation where we might lose both of them. We're down to 4 teams where not a whole lot of people know a whole lot about the teams. Which team do you think can take over the villain role in the playoffs if we lose both the Nets and the Clippers?
And you, so I think Trae Young could take that. And maybe you know what? I think Chris Paul has been the villain and came out of the villain. Now people love Chris Paul, right? I love Chris Paul
I
too.
think we're due for either one of his signature punch to balls. We're like due for his one of those signature ones.
Like there's for Chris Paul.
Yeah, for Chris Paul. That's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say too. I think it's the Suns. I think we're due for one of those signature Chris Paul moments.
So I think yeah, no one's gonna not like anybody on the Jazz. It, it could.
Well, a lot of
Everyone
people hate
loves
Rudy
Embiid.
Gobert. A lot of people hate Rudy
Yeah, I
Gobert.
mean the coronavirus thing, like
Yeah.
he's the one that like he's the super spreader or something like that. That was so weak. So yeah, I would think it could be Chris Paul, it could be Trae Young. If Philly advances and they play Milwaukee, yeah, I mean, no, it's not a villain. There's not a villain in either one of those two. Like I say, everyone loves Embiid, so I guess it would have to be the defaulto Chris Paul. But I don't think you can not like Chris Paul anymore. When he was with the Clippers, everyone didn't like him. Now he's hard. He's a hard guy not to like.
He's
Yeah, we'll
very
see.
hard not to
That's
like.
actually a really good question. We'll have to see. You know, there's going to be one. We just don't know who it is.
We don't exactly like Trae Young kind of exploded as a villain in New York and kind of took over that Reggie Miller role, and everyone in
Correct.
New York just hates him to this day. So
Correct.
that's all we got for today. I had something else I wanted to talk about. We got to let Scal go. He has got a phone call here in a second.
No,
So for me,
I got a minute and a half. What is it?
minute
Let's
and a
talk about
half. How stupid is it that everyone keeps chanting MVP at every other player? I think it's stupid. I think there should only be 5 people that should have MVP counts, and then maybe your 12th man off the bench because it's ironic. But like, if every player gets these MVP vote like chance, like just shut the
Yeah. Yeah,
what
and
I'm
I
gonna
don't
say,
disagree.
shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Like, there's like 5 guys that deserve that, and then like when I was went to Pacers games and Chris Copeland was on the Pacers, I chant MVP every single time he got the
yeah,
ball.
yeah. That
But that
I
was
agree with you.
ironic. It wasn't
No, I'm with
serious.
you on that. I'm with you on that. Like, we got to draw a line. Yeah, like there's no, there's no way. If Embiid, if you're, especially now that it's already been handed out, you know what I mean? Like, you can't do that. You can't
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, it's already been handed out. Shut up. It's over.
So true. So true.
All
All right, we'll catch
right.
up next week. We'll see all these. It's good. Next week we'll have a very different feel because we'll be.
We'll be
I think there'll just be 2 series left at that point, right?
we'll be in the conference finals.
That's it. All
That's
right.
it. All right, for me for Scal. That's it. We'll see you next week. Peace.
See ya.